Welcome back. So, we are done with our topic of distribution center and fulfillment center, and as we said in the last session, just before the break, this is what we are going to discuss in the next couple of sessions or the couple of days, today and the coming Saturday, and that is inventory management. If you remember, at the very beginning when we started this particular course, and we were discussing that every subject, every topic, every function of supply chain management is important, and among all of them, so far we have discussed inventory management and transportation management is extremely critical, because these are the two functions which is responsible for the overall performance of a company in terms of services and in terms of cost as well, because these two functions generate the maximum of expenditure for a particular company. So, efficient management of transportation, which we have already discussed, is necessary, and so is efficient management of inventory. Inventory control is important. By inventory, in one word we say it is stock, but it is more than a stock. There are a number of implications of this stock. There is a reason why inventory is kept with a particular company, and why so? Let us see, to start with the first slide. What is an inventory? Inventory is the raw material, work in progress, products, work in process products, finished goods that are considered to be the portion of the business assets that are ready for sale. So, it represents one of the most important asset of a business. The turnover of inventory represents one of the primary sources of revenue generation and subsequent earnings for the company shareholder. So, it is the stock of direct or indirect materials. Inventory is required to meet the expected and unexpected demand of future. It manages the flow of materials. It determines the level, the replenishment time and size of orders. It satisfies customer demand and support production. It is an asset of the organization. It is acquired, allocated and controlled. It influences sales and revenue generation, and it influences production and operations cost. So, let us see, we talk of raw materials, then we can talk of, we can add one additional facility or function, say components, then the product, that means the company who is producing, who are utilizing these components to make the final product. Once the product is made, it goes through the distribution channel, that is the distributors, the retailers and the final customer. At every stage, and if you remember when we discussed logistics function, we said logistics function is comprised of facilities who perform different functions, and one of the function was warehousing and inventory management. So, at every stage, whether it is a supplier of a raw material, for instance consider any product that you see in front of you, it could be a computer, it can be the table, it can be the fan above you in the ceiling, it can be any food item, it can be the clothing, it can be the washing machine, or it could be the music system. Any product that you see, they all go through this particular supply chain process, we all know. So, somebody has supplied the raw materials, to make the fan or the TV, the actual material that it is made up of, and then you think of the PC, the computer, the desktop. The components are done by different companies. There are different companies responsible for manufacturing the different components. Somebody does the chassis, somebody does the keyboard, somebody does the motherboard, so on and so forth. And then ultimately the IBMs and the Dells and everybody, they make the final product that they manufacture the PC, the computer. Then it reaches the final customer. Now, so at every stage, shipment components, raw materials are produced, and they cannot be distributed at one go. They need to be stored, because one particular supplier of raw material is supplying to different companies. They are not supplying to one particular company who is responsible for the component. Same with the component, the person who is producing the components is producing this component for different companies who are making this final product. So there is a need to store the goods, there is a need to sort the goods, because everything would not be required immediately. So let us go back to the slide and read it once again carefully and see what inventory is all about. We will spend some time in actually defining the inventory. Is a raw material work in process, either raw material or work in process products or finished goods, and the finished goods are a part of the company assets. Any direct or indirect materials, it is required. Sometimes the customer demand are not foreseen, are not expected. There may be a sudden rise in a particular demand of a product. So you need to store your goods that you have produced to meet that particular demand, to satisfy the customer demand and support the production. Now the production is happening over here, so it is a responsibility of the unit or the function who is maintaining the inventory. His responsibility is to constantly feed the production plant, and he can do it only if he has a sufficient inventory. If it does not, the production will come to an end, and that is applicable at the first stage also. If there is not a constant supply of the raw material from the inventory or from the stock, the component cannot be produced. Same here, there may be a customer demand, there is a continuous customer demand, but if there is not a ready-made stock from which the customer demand can be met, then the customer demand or the customer transaction will come to an end. Let us go to the next slide. So this is what is inventory. Now what do we mean by managing the inventory? Here we are not going to discuss only what is inventory, that is what we have done. Now in order to manage the inventory, what is required? Inventory management is the supervision of the stock items. A component of supply chain management. Inventory management supervises the flow of goods from manufacturer to warehouses and from these facilities to the point of sale. So supply chain management today is well connected and well integrated. So is inventory management at every point over here, because the function and activity at every unit depends upon the readiness or the supply of materials of the previous facility. So they are interconnected. So managing the inventory, it is not only necessary for the production unit to manage its own inventory, it has to be well connected, well coordinated with other inventory management, with other companies as well, how they are managing inventory, whether they are in sync with the final inventory management of the supply chain as a whole. Let us refer to the next slide. So these are the primary functions of inventory we have discussed already. To this inventory management, what does inventory do? It increases profitability. The marketing the market is constantly fed from the inventory. If we do an efficient inventory management, the production does not come to a halt, it is not affected. It is a working stock, it is an anticipation stock, it is a cyclic stock. We are going to discuss all of them in details later. Decoupling stock, maximum amount the business investment, balancing the supply and demand, improve the efficiency of the entire supply chain. A safety stock, inventories are required, different commodities are required at different geographical locations. Then there is a pipeline inventory, particularly for products which are ready to be dispatched. So, the next slide gives us the role of inventory. Improve the supply and demand. This is basically a diagrammatic representation of what we have said earlier. Improve forecasting, reduce material flow time, reduce waiting time, reduce buffer inventory, supply demand variability. We are going to understand this better when we go to our these are the types of inventory. Merchandise inventory of trading goods held by the trader, manufacturing industry, by the manufacturing industry, raw material, work in progress, finished good, packing material, MRO goods. MRO goods include consumables, that is cleaning, office supplies, plant upkeep supplies, replacement parts, pipeline. It is also essential, it is not only the components or the semi-finished goods or the final product or the finished good which are considered inventory. Even to upkeep, to maintain the plant, there are different kinds of materials, chemicals, etc. that are required, which also needs very efficient inventory management. Because if you do not have, if you are short of grease, for instance, which is required to run the machine, just for an example, if you do not have a stock, the machine cannot be run properly. So, there are different items which are not directly involved with the finished product, but they are responsible for the running of a plant, of any plant, whether it is producing the raw material or the component or finished product, which also forms a part of the inventory management. So, this is what we said in the previous slide. Now, what are the categories? Raw materials, finished goods, components, which are required primarily by the manufacturing. Wholesaler or distributor, they also need inventory. So, who needs inventory? All of them needs inventory. So, all of them put together are a part of the manufacturing unit, though their functions are different, they produce different products, but they are basically the three of them, the supplier, the component, the producer of component and the production, they actually all together form a team which actually is responsible for the finished product, the production. So, they all need inventory. Who also needs inventory is the distributor or the wholesaler. Going forward, the retailer needs inventory management as well, inventory as well, but the volume of inventory required at each step, at each facility differs. A wholesaler requires a large volume of inventory because he has to feed a large number of retailers, and for a retailer it is important that he does not want inventory to pile up. A retailer's inventory focus is on movement. That means shipment should come in and it should immediately go out to the consumers. There should be a regular flow, but for a wholesaler or distributor, he requires inventory or stock in large quantities. We have deliberately skipped the previous few slides because they were basically an extension of we said earlier as far as the function and the role of inventory. But here, when we say categories, where is inventory management required? It is required at primarily at the manufacturing stage, at the wholesaling stage, as well as the retailer stage. This slide is extremely interesting and important. in every company you have different functional groups. What are these functional groups? It could be the marketing team, it could be the finance team, it could be the purchase, production, the architecture or the engineering team. Now everybody views or everybody has a certain inclination towards inventory. When I say inventory, the volume of inventory. Just think of marketing to start with. Now what is the primary function of marketing? Is to ensure sales and hence revenue. So his main task or his main focus is on customer satisfaction, is to meet customer demand. A marketing team will not compromise on delivery of shipments to customer whenever it is required. So he always needs a significant volume or a high volume of inventory. Doesn't matter whether it costs high, it costs less, whether the inventory management requires an operating increases the operating cost, doesn't matter, because he is only focused at his own role and objective. So different functional groups. So it is important for a company to decide the optimum inventory to be managed by balancing the requirement or inclination of different functional groups. Not think of the team who is doing the architecture or who is doing the engineering of the product, who is designing the product. Now the department who is designing the product, earlier all products had a long lifespan, right? If you see whether it's a car or it's a telephone or a refrigerator or a music system, it had a long lifespan. So any car that were produced, for instance Ambassador, they could have been produced in large volumes, in large numbers, because the features did not change every now and then. Or the person who is producing the components to that Ambassador car, he could also without any risk could maintain a large volume, because he knew that the components will not change, the features of the components will not change very soon, and that applied to every product. But what happens is, what is happening today? You forget about vehicles, you think of a mineral water bottle. Everything, almost every product has a very short lifespan today. You see the cell phones, you see the music systems, you see the audio systems, you see the soft drinks. So different products, the features are changing, the taste, the quality, the look, the packaging is changing almost every few months. So we are discussing, what we are talking over here is inventory management, right? So the department who is responsible for designing would never like to have high inventory, because there is a possibility that there is a new feature and the old entire stock will become obsolete. So whereas the marketing team needs a high inventory, doesn't matter who is involved or what is required, the engineering or the design department would need a smaller volume of inventory, because there is always an apprehension that the existing stock become obsolete, the existing feature will become obsolete or old very soon. Similarly, the purchase department would like a high volume of inventory. You know why? Purchase department is always inclined to buy at a price which is low. And when we do get a discounted offer, when we do get a low price, whenever you buy items in large volumes. So they would like to buy in large volume and thus avail of the quantity discounts, and in the process they would enhance or increase the level of inventory in that particular company. In the same logic, the finance department would always want a lower volume of inventory, because inventory management involves high holding cost, and we are going to discuss holding cost very, very soon. They want an efficient usage of the capital. They do not want idle capital lying in the warehouses, because inventories are assets, are capital of the company, and they do not want the capital to stay idle somewhere. They want the capitals to be used every time and multiplied. So, you see inclinations from various departments or functional groups for inventory management is different. Now, there are certain matrices which determine what is the volume of inventory that is required, and whether an inventory is high or low is determined by certain parameters. We call them matrices. One is the production rate. If the production rate is efficient and high, obviously the inventory will grow. The lead time. I'll tell you what a lead time is. A lead time is the time between the placement of an order to the delivery of a particular order. That is called a lead time. Sometimes companies are very prompt in their lead time. Sometimes the companies do take a significantly more time to deliver a particular product after order is placed. So, inventory level obviously would proportionately increase or decrease based on whether the lead time is more or less. Also, whether a company is inclined to invest on having inventory or not. Also, a company would like to know that in case there is an issue or a challenge in production, should I be able to meet the customer demand from the existing inventory? If a particular company objective is to meet the customer demand, what may come, in case, as I said, if there is a challenge or there is an error or there is a stoppage in production, they would always like to have a high volume of inventory. So, these are the matrices that determine whether a company would have a high or a low volume of inventory. So, now we are talking of inventory cost. Now, inventory, it starts from the material being ordered from the supplier. So, the company who is producing the components or the work in process goods would order the shipment or the items from the supplier. In turn, the manufacturer of the finished goods would also order. So, for every unit, for every company, there is something called ordering cost. Now, once the order has been delivered, he has to maintain that order in the form of an inventory. So, there is something which is called holding cost. All costs that are incurred to maintain or hold the item or the product in the warehouse is called holding cost. All costs related to ordering and receiving the shipment is termed as falls under ordering cost. There is another cost which is called stock out cost or cost of replenishment. What is replenishment? Replenishment is refilling of the inventory level. So, when a part of the inventory is consumed, that part needs to be refilled. So, if a company had suppose 10 tons of inventory and he consumes 10 tons, so he has to replenish, that means he has to get back. So, he is left with only 5 tons and he has to replenish the order, that means he has to reorder, he has to again get 5 tons of materials to maintain its inventory level of 10 tons. Now, there is a cost which is called stock out. When a company goes stock out, that means he does not have any stock. There may be orders during that period which the company may fail to earn, that the company may fail to deliver, and in the process lose the sale or lose the revenue. That is an indirect cost which is called a shortage or a stock out cost. That means the company is out of stock of a particular product. So, that is an indirect cost as well. So, these three basically forms the inventory management, inventory cost, but we are going to focus primarily on these two costs, which are ordering and holding cost. In the next slide, you will see what we call is a total cost of inventory. On the y axis, we have total costs, and on the right side quantity ordered. So, if you see carrying cost, every time you order an item, the higher the item you order, your cost is going to increase, and accordingly the graph has been made. The procurement and out of stock cost, and the summation is the total cost. What does inventory carrying cost include? It includes deterioration, pilferage, cost of money, its carrying cost, the holding cost, the taxes, the insurance, the warehouse expenses, physical handling, clerical and inventory control, obsolescence cost. All these costs put together, they form the inventory carrying cost. That means the cost to carry or hold an inventory. So, the next diagram below, it gives the percentage of the total cost. So, inventory obsolescence is 5%. So, if you see the maximum cost of carrying an inventory is high freight cost. Now, before we proceed further, there is one concept that we need to learn and understand, and that is called average inventory. What is average inventory? Now, in the previous slide, we will just go back to the previous slide, and we said there are two types of cost. One is holding and one is ordering. We have just seen the breakup of the holding cost. Now, what does that ordering cost mean? Ordering cost means everything, every cost that is incurred. Some company, they advertise or in the paper, and they invite tenders, they invite quotations from different suppliers. That itself is a cost. So, processing the order is a cost. There are few people who are involved in procurement, that is a cost. Some companies also take the transportation cost from the supplier to its own godown, that is also a cost. The loading unloading of the shipment is a cost. All the documentation and every process involved in between falls under inventory ordering cost. That means from the time the company places an order with a supplier till the time the item reaches at its facility, at its warehouse, all costs put together is called ordering cost. And in the slide, if you can see, we have mentioned what are the carrying costs involved. All costs that are involved: warehouse maintenance, plant maintenance, electricity, rent, everything, insurance, obsolescence cost, freight cost, warehouse expense, everything put together forms the inventory holding cost or inventory carrying cost. That means to carry the inventory, to maintain the inventory in the warehouse is called holding cost. Before we proceed any further, as I said, we are going to discuss a very important concept in inventory management, and which is called average inventory. Now think of a situation that a company producing pairs of jeans, for instance, pairs of jeans. So he orders hypothetically 100 pairs of jeans. So this axis is quantity and this is time. So once he has ordered these 100 pairs of jeans, what he is going to do next? He is going to sell this 100 pairs of jeans every day, every second, every hour, etc. So with time his inventory is going to reduce and ultimately come to 0, right. So 100 is his quantity and every day there is an expense, and ultimately his inventory level, so he starts with an inventory of 100. At this point there is an order which again brings his inventory to 100, because he orders 100 pairs of jeans every time. That is his order quantity. Okay. Similarly, again once he has ordered another 100 pairs of jeans, consumers start buying. Here they buy, the inventory ends at 0 again. This is again 100. So with time his inventory reduces. It was 100, it is 100 minus something, 100 minus something, it keeps on reducing, and then ultimately it comes to 0. It comes to 0. The quantity comes to 0. Sorry, this is not 0, this is time. Say at time T1, T2. At time T1 it is 0, at time T2 it is 0. Now if I am managing the inventory, how do I know how much inventory I am carrying? Am I carrying 100 pairs of jeans? It could be 100, it could be 1000, it can be a lakh, it can be 10,000, 1 lakh, 50 lakhs, whatever it may be, just hypothetically 100. So how much inventory am I carrying in my warehouse? Is it 100? But that is only on the first day. On the second day it may be 99 or 98 or 95 or 80. On the second day it could be 70, on the third day, etc., etc. At T1 it becomes 0. So what do I want to know? What should I know? I cannot calculate my inventory every day. I cannot calculate my cost of inventory. My cost of inventory is also connected to my average inventory in the plant or in the warehouse. Now how do I calculate average inventory? The way exactly we calculate average, the maximum minus the minimum divided by 2. So what is the maximum inventory over here? Q. What is the minimum inventory over here? 0. So Q minus 0 divided by, we are taking 2 periods, maximum and minimum, divided by 2. So it becomes Q by 2. Now we will study later on something which is called reorder point. Now no company can afford to go stock out. Suppose you are selling, you are a retailer who is selling 100 pairs of pants, who are selling pairs of jeans. Can you afford to have your shop absolutely 0? Your customers will walk in and they will find no materials or no items in your shop. Can you afford to do that? You can't. So there is always a reorder point. What is that reorder point? The reorder point could be here. Why do you order over here? Because there is something which is called, so you reorder over here. This is reorder number 1. This is reorder number 2. So you reorder over here in advance because you still have some quantity left. You still have this quantity left for customers to buy. but you do not want the inventory level to go to 0. But at the same time, the supplier will need supplier of these jeans, they will need some time to deliver the shipment. So he will order before it comes to 0 at T1. So you order over here, and this is what is called lead time. That means the time from the time it is ordered till such time it is delivered. When it is delivered, how much is it delivered? 100 units second, because he is always ordering 100 units. So by the time he reaches this point, his order or his stock against become 100. Now it depends, the reorder point depends upon the consumption of the product. It is not necessarily at the center. So depending upon its consumption nature of that particular item, a customer or a supplier decides its reordering point. And because there is a lead time, there is a gap between, there will always be a gap between the time when the order is placed to the time it is delivered. A reorder point is always before the time it goes stock out. As we said at the very beginning, it is a very important chapter or a part of total supply chain management course, inventory management. So it will take more sessions for us to discuss this particular topic. So we are going to have at least 2 to 3 sessions to discuss this particular subject, which is called inventory management, and in the next couple of sessions we are going to discuss further on inventory management. We are going to end here, and we are going to continue with our topic in the next class, that is Saturday. Thank you for today. Please study your notes and keep yourself updated. Thank you very much.